All right, so now we're going to talk about the biggest bear market in with commodities going crazy forever. Uh, Welcoming back Angie Setzer, uh, goddess of grain. Goddess, goddess, goddess. Why do your grains keep going down?
Oh, I don't know. But we're getting pretty close to what we like to call the LinkedIn low. And in grains where you tend to have people in my position, farmers, anyone in agribusiness, it seems, thinking about what they could be doing with their life that's outside of agriculture at this point,
We
because
got to
that's
be
the,
close. We
yeah, that's
got to
what
be
I'm
close.
saying.
Huh?
Like,
So,
when you,
Angie, what surprises me is now you have a weaker dollar.
Mhm.
So are the crops that good? I mean, the divergence in corn, I mean, it's just been grinding it out. Hasn't been a lot of price damage, in months if you want to go long term, but it certainly isn't a market that, I'd want to be getting short down here. Here's
Yeah.
look at, we just made new lows. This is glaring divergence. What's going to be the match that lights the fuse for this?
Uh, I'm going to be watching. I think, there's a lot of questions, obviously, about what we're going to see with world demand. I think, we could potentially be underestimating, how much business the US can capture when it comes to world demand. There's quite a few production issues or production reductions. The USDA, currently could be overstating global corn production by about a half a billion bushels, give or take, just looking at official government estimates versus what the USDA is currently projecting. And that's going to result, if you look at the US, we're the cheapest, highest quality, most readily available supplier in the world, especially if we see the dollar kind of continue to see some pressure or something like that. I
We
think
are.
that's part of it.
Will China
But
come back? What would bring China back to our
that's
markets?
what I was
Anything?
just gonna say. Yeah, well, yeah, I think,
Yeah, I
I
mean,
think
I price over ideology when it comes to everyone in the world, right? I mean, even if it's not your good friend, if you're
100%.
getting better prices, you buy it from them.
Yeah, and on top of that, I mean, I think, and I actually was just getting ready to send out this morning's comments, and one of the items that I put in is that this is a bit different. This our approach to trade, or the world's approach to trade with China, is a bit different than what it was, at the start of the first trade war. We just had Canada come out and say they're going to levy 100% tariffs on Chinese electric vehicle imports. They're going to levy 25% on steel and aluminum imports. You've got the EU levying tariffs on Chinese imports, and some of these other things that you're seeing where, we're not the only ones out there kind of quote unquote poking the bear, so to speak. And so I think that, in that in and of itself, China's going to have to look to us simply because there are quality issues with the Brazilian crop, what's left there. They've got some protein
Okay.
problems, potentially limiting their ability to export much else. You could see an increase in needs of blendable supplies as well. But I think the biggest thing that you need to see right now is China figure out how to support their consumer, or really kind of work to rebuild consumer confidence. And so you have seen a push, from state economists or state-backed think tanks, economists from state-backed think tanks, and seen it in China Daily, where there's a push for direct to consumer stimulus. And I think that's the catalyst we could possibly need to see in order to get commodities to kind of turn around,
Who's
perhaps
going to do
reintroduce
that?
this idea of
China?
inflation.
Who's
There
going
is
to do
talk they're trying to get them to do it. I mean, I think at this point, everything that
modern
China's been
monetary theory?
that's try to introduce some. I mean, and China was really one of the only major countries that didn't, major economies, excuse me, that didn't do that during COVID.
Okay.
So it would be interesting to see if they kind of work to term out local debt, and work to directly stimulate the consumer in some way. Though Xi is totally against that. So, like, I want to say I'm not an expert in Chinese economic theories by any means, but it's something that we have to be watching, because I think it could be, you ask what the catalyst could be, and it would be this idea that Chinese demand isn't complete garbage, because that's kind of the narrative in the market right now.
Guys that are watching this video that trade other things like S&Ps and bonds. I mean, I look at these charts and I'm not saying, excuse the pun, bet the farm, but I even saw a video by Doug Casey, who's pretty, a legend, and he just said he was looking at the grains, and
Hmm.
that was a few weeks ago. So, I've been looking for a low here forever in these grains,
You and me both.
especially after the pullback, the huge pullback we had from the war. Started getting constructive in here, but it's just been grinding. Hasn't been a collapse. It's been more grinding.
Hmm.
What about the wheat? What do the fundamentals look like on the wheat here?
Completely the opposite of what market action looks like, to be honest. I mean, one of the things that's odd in wheat right now is that we are working to kind of put away the newly harvested northern hemisphere supplies, with the idea that southern hemisphere harvest is just getting underway. And so that is one of the things that tends to weigh heavily upon wheat, this time of year. We see a lot of farmer hedging that needs to take place, and we see a lot of, typically would see a lot of end users come in and look to try to source cheap supplies. One of the problems that we're seeing right now is that the end users really aren't looking to aggressively make purchases simply because they kind of have some sticker shock. Like we've seen the wheat market, not really have a substantial amount of cash carry in it to where, we were looking at prices exceptionally more expensive 6 months down the line than, what they were here in the nearby time frame. This year, you're really seeing it. I mean, if you look out, anyone that's holding on to wheat is going to want to get paid to hold on to it. And that's part of the
Okay.
reason that we saw the GASC tender kind of come out, and they really didn't make these large purchases that folks were expecting, simply because they were kind of wanting to get today's prices 6 months from now, and that's impossible in grain. So you've got to add, minimum 7 cents per bushel per month just to hold it. And so we're just kind of seeing this sort of misalignment at this point in the market structure itself. But if you look at it from a fundamental standpoint, you've had Russian production reductions, pretty substantial production losses. You're seeing some continued issues with their spring wheat production and potential losses there. France is looking at their worst wheat crop since 1986. And so I think
Well,
that says something. Germany's falling closely in their shoes. You're looking at potential reductions out of Argentina and Brazil. There's a decent crop in Australia, but I mean, around the world, global supplies are going to be much, much lower than what we've seen here these last few years.
okay.
Just as we kind of encounter this sort of escalation between Russia and Ukraine that could really, kind of turn how we're moving grain out of that region on its head potentially. It just
Okay, so
hasn't yet.
supply chain and production problems in Ukraine that they've been able to stave off. I remember the first year
Mhm.
of the war, it showed, bombs going off and farmers working their fields at the same time. But they've been able to produce surprisingly, right, over the last couple of years, pretty
Yeah,
well.
you've seen some pretty substantial, subsidization, but you've also seen a containment of the war. One of my theses over the last couple of years, and the reasons that the market hasn't seen the influence on food prices that we thought we would see, is that we were really able to kind of contain that war to eastern Ukraine. It was almost like we had lines drawn, and we weren't really impacting those. We also had really great air defense systems put in place, across
Right.
much of Ukraine, and some of these other things. But now, as the situation tends to, one of the Kursk is a breadbasket, in Russia.
Yeah.
Like they
Oh,
are
okay. I didn't know that.
yeah, they're a large producer of grain. It's one of the best production areas in Russia, and so the market being completely complacent in all of this it has been somewhat mind-blowing to me. But I also understand, if you look at the cash market for cues, we still have readily available supplies in a lot of places as we wrap up harvest and work to try to put this stuff away.
Okay. That's really interesting to know. Because that could, I mean, for years it's been the Ukrainian farmer under pressure of war disrupting his livelihood. And this has kind of turned the tables. I mean,
Hmm.
so there's leverage with Ukraine taking over if they can hold this area that could affect Russia as a whole because
Hmm.
of grain supplies.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say go so far as to say it would limit, Russia's ability to produce, but it would definitely cause some issues, especially if we were to see, Western countries start to give permission for the use of weapons further into Russian territory, I'm not an expert in war by any means, but like I said, the how complacent the market has been about the Russia-Ukraine situation has been quite surprising to me. And this is coming from someone who thought we overdid it in the first time around. You know what I mean? Like when
Yeah.
the invasion itself happened, I was one of those that was like, stay calm. We're always going to be able to move supplies to a certain extent. But you could start to really discuss, supply reductions out of that region here over the next year or two in a big way, especially if the situation doesn't calm down.
Okay. Well, really, it's fascinating how geo stuff plays into every aspect, especially agriculture.
Yeah.
Someone's asking, and I already know the answer to the question, Amashu, that grains are your specialty. Do you
Hmm.
follow things like cotton, cocoa, coffee, softs?
We'll watch the softs. I watch the softs. I mean, right now the coffee story is the drought in Brazil that you're seeing. When it comes to cocoa and some of the others, I just watch out of the peripheral more than anything. But they have their own unique supply stories more than anything. Cocoa is kind
Okay,
of very different than corn in the sense that next spring we'll have another round of opportunity to plant corn that we'll harvest the following fall. Cocoa is really one of those that, from what I understand, it takes time to be able to build supply. It's not necessary, so there's a lot of little factors at play there.
okay. So anyway, you know, take a screenshot for your clients that
Right.
this is where I think that, remember last time I said I think
Hmm.
you're going to get a lower dollar. Maybe that'll help, but so far, at least maybe it's stabilizing things.
Oh,
So
I think so.
yeah, take a picture because I
Right.
do think we're going to take out par eventually. I think there could be a
That's
bounce.
Go ahead.
I'm talking about a seriously lower dollar here, Angie. Really, if we start taking this out, um, we could go to, first maybe 97, but we could see a 90 handle on the
From
dollar
a
next year. That's got to help, right? JD
Yeah,
Vance
I was
kind of
gonna say,
philosophy. Huh?
yeah, from a selfish standpoint, I hope that's the case. I'd like to see the US kind of come back and be one that is able to I want to see us maintain a competitive stance in the world market. And I think a lot of folks right now are kind of writing the US off as an exporter. And I think that is a bit mis I just don't think it's a smart idea at this point because I think we have the ability, we have the quality, and we're reliable in ways that some of our competition isn't. So,
And we're going to
um,
offer a foreign exchange sale on all of it.
yes,
We're already down 5%, and there's maybe another 10 to follow or so. That's got to
yeah,
make U.S. grains attractive.
it's definitely helped. That's part of the reason that you've seen soybean purchases on the rise here. By China. Obviously, it's seasonal, but it's helped firm up their margins as well. But that is one thing I want to mention on soybeans that is interesting for the audience to be paying attention to. There's been a lot of conversation as of late about U.S. processing capacity and how it's misaligned with U.S. Biofuel demand potentially as we move forward, especially in soybeans. It's been part of the reason you've seen soybean oil, really kind of fall off in big ways, and it's been some of what has pressured the soybean market in general. One thing I want to caution folks is that we are seeing a pretty rapid growth in global biofuel blending rates. Like we've seen Indonesia go from 35 to 40 to now there's talk that they're going to work towards 50. They're the world's largest palm oil exporter. And so if they start to really kind of put their demand, more domestically driven, that's going to influence world vegetable oil supplies. We're also looking at
Yeah.
India bumping up their ethanol blending rates. That's helping the US with ethanol exports and other things that, a lower dollar will help with. And so I do think it's important, to kind of pay attention to a lot of the factors at play. And like I said, I mean, the market structure itself has been so poor, but I think the fundamentals overall really kind of point to, some potential bullish transitions, especially if we get into harvest and the crop isn't there as much as what folks are trying to expect it to be.
So I want to ask you about that. Are the crops made? It's the end of August, or could there still be problems?
There's still problems. I think if you look at August as a whole, it's been one of the drier stretches of weather that we've seen. Finishing weather is one of the lesser important factors. Like you're not going to see a 20% yield loss, just because you have a little bit of a drier August or something like that. But you could definitely see a downturn. I would caution, anyone that's really kind of just using that 55 bushel the acre estimate from Pro Farmer that was put out last week, as a guide. I'd be really careful in that. Especially with this dry stretch of weather that we've seen across Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, and into parts of Iowa. There is no real drought concern by any means, but you can definitely lose 5% or so relatively easily without even trying with a dry finish. And so to me, I think the risk is there that you could see the USDA potentially come out with a touch higher yield figure in September, but I would anticipate you start to see that getting walked back here as we get into October and November. And I'll be really just paying attention to basis and spreads as harvest progresses, and that'll kind of tell us the true story of what's out there.
You would think you would at least send me a t-shirt after all
I
the
know
years
I've
I've
got to get
interviewed
some
you.
some swag out there. Oh.
I wear it on, I get, I'm on a lot of programs.
Right.
I'll wear it for you. Anyway, listen, guys, it's really amazing how cheap the grains have become. Just imagine what kind of inflation problem we'll have when there's a bull market in grains. And we know one day the dad hat, nah, yeah. All right. Anyway, so Angie is a great follow. Look at what we learned today, about where Ukraine has invaded the breadbasket of Russia. You don't hear that on the news. So, Angie, anything you want to wrap it with? I think that we'll be talking about a different market going into the end of the year than we are today. That's my call.
I'm
Good
on the
call, huh?
same, yeah, I'm on the same side with you. I think that I'm trying not to let recency bias cloud my judgment. But I do
Yeah,
think that
great term.
2020 could be a bit of I think we could see a soft repeat. I don't expect the whole entire thing, but if you look at 2020 price action and some of that, we really overestimated production and underestimated demand in a big way that year
Yeah,
going into the fall.
yeah.
And I think you could see the same tenets in this year's trade in a big way.
And I think bottom pickers got to be worn out. I know what it
Yeah.
feels like to be worn out when you keep trying to
Yeah. Yeah.
pick
At this
tops
point
and
in time.
bottoms, and then you
Yeah.
get a little pop and you think this is it, and then it's not. And I've
Hmm.
been through those baton death marches before, so
Yes, that's what it feels like.
I would say that if there's a grain bull left, it's you and me.
Hmm. And we're sad.
Okay.
I'm sad. I don't even like myself right now. I'm sick of hearing
All
it.
right. Well, Angie, always appreciate you being here. Hope your business continues to grow, and I think that your years of growing interest in the grains, and that wasn't supposed to be a pun either, but I think
I'll
you're
take
going
it.
to be getting real busy in the next year or so.
I
Because,
hope so. I think so too. So I appreciate it. Thanks for having
yeah,
me.
this one guy said something keeps sticking in my head that we're going to have deflation in things we own and inflation in things we use. Do you understand the difference? Like our
Yeah.
assets might
Super
deflate,
interesting to think about.
but things that, you know, have to be replaced and you use food, fuel, all those things aren't going to get cheap. So um, it's a great year, I think, ahead for these grains with what the dollar did. Appreciate you, Angie, coming here all these years to talk about your markets with us.
Thank you for having me. I love coming on.
All right, there. We'll wrap it with that on an uptick from Angie. Got it. Follow Angie and go to her website right here and get some, get some gear and become a farmer. Learn. I remember Jimmy Rogers saying many years ago when commodities were cheap, he said the guys that are be driving the Ferraris are the ones not with an MBA on Wall Street, but know how to drive a tractor. How about that?
I
All
love
right,
it.
so you guys are due. So that's a wrap, everyone. Good hunting the rest of the day, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Angie, thanks again. You can follow Angie on X at Goddess of Grain, and keep this in your sight, what's happening here. I mean, Saloom even bought, he liked the bean chart and he just clicked his mouse. All right, so thanks, Angie. Okay, Angie's gone. And everyone else, thank you guys. See you tomorrow. All right. Adios. Don't just count your ears of corn and your pods, count your blessings.
Hey traders, this is Blake Morrow with ForexAnalytix. Thanks for stopping by our YouTube channel. Don't forget to like these videos, share them, and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any of the content that we provide here for free. Thanks for stopping by. I'll see you in the next video.